Hello everybody, I'm back. I'm so sorry to all my followers that do follow me regularly. I know there's only a few of you, but I love you guys dearly, and I know I promised you that I would do some regular uploads while I was away and I failed you. I'll get into more detail about that, but I am sorry, but I'm back. And yes, we're going to have a nice little chat today. But today's video, I'm just going to be talking about my experience flying with twin toddlers and the jet lag and all those things, and just give you like a real life idea of how it was, because I don't feel like people have done videos like this, but I did try to take clips of the boys on the plane, and I thought that this would be more of an informative video showing you actually how the flight was over the 10 hours, but it was just impossible. It was far too difficult to film, and I feel like if I was to do it again, maybe I'd have more of a plan, but this was quite stressful and I really needed like a third person to film us because I just didn't have enough hands. So I'm sorry, it's more going to be just like a chat from me telling you how it was and what happened and things that happened that we weren't expecting and all that stuff. So I hope this helps somebody or gives you a picture if maybe you've got a flight coming up for the first time with your little ones and you want to know how ours was. Then I'm going to give you all the details, but yes, I apologise we don't have more clips of how it actually was when we were on board. But I also hope this will be a little bit of a carry-on from my previous video. If you didn't see it, I did do a video on what we took for the boys' carry-on luggage, everything that we had for them and what we prepared for, and I will run through a little bit of like what worked and what didn't work, what we didn't need and what I wish we'd taken and stuff like that. So if you didn't watch that video, I'll leave a link up here. Maybe go and just check that out first so you know exactly what I'm talking about, otherwise you might wonder what the hell I'm talking about in half of this video. But yes, going on to my trip, I am sorry, I meant to do vlogs and I literally woke up every morning like, right, today I'm gonna film, and then I just got carried away being in the moment. It's such precious time for me when I see friends and family, because I live so far away from them all, that I just didn't want to be behind a lens of a camera and like worrying about trying to capture all the moments. I just wanted to be present and be with everyone and spend the time. So yeah, we had a very lovely trip. The boys got to meet their cousins and their uncles and their aunts, and I got to spend some quality time with my parents and my brother, which was so nice. And it's quite an adjustment when you get back. I miss everybody so much. But then it's also like, this feels like home, so it's just a very weird dynamic. I always find it really hard to adjust, but we've been back a couple of days, still dealing with the jet lag, the boys very much so, more than us, and it's been really quite tough, but I'll go into detail about that a little bit later in the video. But yeah, I'm glad to be back and I hope you'll enjoy this one. So let's get started. But let's begin with the flights. So if you didn't know, we flew from Los Angeles to London, which is where I'm from, and the flight is approximately 10 hours. I think actually going, it was really quick. We had like the wind helping us with the speed or something, so I think it was only just over 9 hours, and then coming back it was like nearly 11. The flight going was almost a night flight. It would have been technically a night flight for the boys because we took off at about 4 p.m. and we got there about what would have been 2 a.m. LA time. So the boys, I thought, would be asleep for most of that flight, and then the flight coming back was the opposite, and it was like a 10 a.m. flight, so it was like a full-on day, and we landed what would have been London time 8 p.m. So one was a night flight, one was a day flight for the boys' schedule, and from my view on it, the night flight was way better. I don't know if that was just a coincidence because it was the first leg and it was all new to the boys, but they seemed so much more calm and less full of energy and a lot more easier to deal with, whereas that day flight on the way back, they were manic. They had so much energy, they wanted to be moving all the time, and they just didn't sit still really. But I don't know if that was because they'd already done it previously and it wasn't like as new as it was the first time round, I don't know, but that was the experience with the differences in times of the flights. Going on to the first flight, everything went really smoothly. We got on board and I planned to sort of do a mini nighttime routine at about 7 o'clock when the boys would be going to sleep if they were at home, and everything kind of went smoothly. We tried to give them plain food. What I will say is I personally wouldn't give them plain food again. I would definitely take my own meals for the boys. One, just because there's just food everywhere and trays everywhere. The crew couldn't help me with bringing my food out and my husband's food out separately to the boys, so it's very hard to help your little ones eat when you've got trays of food in front of you for you as well. Things were hot, which I didn't want to touch them. Obviously knives and forks, they were trying to grab everything. It was just very hard to deal with, and I had planned on my husband having one of the boys and me having the other at the time when meals came, but it just didn't work out like that, and I was sitting next to both of them and it was just a jumble. Food that we had been given was going everywhere. And I ended up eating about an hour or two later after I'd sorted the boys out, but it was all very, very difficult. So on the flight back, I did bring them their own food in Tupperware containers and just gave them stuff that I knew they were easily going to be able to eat themselves, so I didn't have to worry too much. So that's my first tip. Take meals, try not to use the plain food unless you know your children are at an age where they're capable of feeding themselves, because mine are 20 months old. They love to use cutlery, but they're not really that brought up to speed with it yet, and things end up everywhere. So there's my first tip. The next was we got them ready for going to sleep, and we had bought those inflatable travel cubes, which are actually noted on Amazon as flight safe or flight approved. And you need to check with your airline, because I just didn't think, that was my bad, but I didn't think to check with my airline if they were accepted, and they weren't. So after we'd blown these things up, got the boys all comfy on them, a crew member walked past and was like, you need to disassemble those, they're not allowed on this aircraft. So that was completely pointless, one for me to buy, and two for me to make the effort to like pack them and blow them up and all that stuff. So yeah, they do sell really expensive versions of these as well, so just beware. Like, I don't know if they are flight approved or what, but I'm glad that I only spent $30 on these and not like 150 like some of them are, so just be wary of that. The other thing I will say is the boys are obsessed with TVs and screens, and I didn't really think about that. I just thought, oh good, that's going to be a good distraction when they get fussy, but the screens on the airplanes are touch sensitive, so when you touch them they come on, so there was no way of me turning them off for the boys. I would say that was probably our number one distraction and stopped them going to sleep, because they were just obsessed with watching something on the screen, and they got beyond tired and then they just couldn't settle. So they were awake for pretty much all of the flight. Henry was awake the whole flight, and Jack maybe got an hour to 2 hours of sleep, but the screens were definitely a negative. We'd actually bought little iPads for the boys to use, and we didn't end up even getting them out of the case because they had a screen right in front of them which played everything and more than they ever needed to see. So as much as it was a good distraction and kept them quiet, it also really did affect them getting any sleep and any rest. What I will say, following on from the previous video, is we 100% overpacked. All the toys that I'd put in the case, I maybe used 2 or 3 of them, because the boys were just so amazed by their surroundings and being on the plane. Now, I don't know, this may just be like a one-off for us, and I'm sure everybody's flight experience is different, and everyone for us going forward is going to be different. So I probably would pack everything again and take as much as I did, but we just didn't use it. The boys were really not interested in playing with toys. They had way too much amusement all around them, and on the way going they were really good. They just sat and watched the TV. On the way back they did have a little bit more energy, but they were just like walking from seats to seats because we had 2 rows, and they really just didn't sit still. We did get a few toys out. Some of the best toys for us were the buckle toy, when they had to do all those little buckles, that little cushion thing. The pop-in pipes, they loved those, and we actually kept those out for the whole flight, and they just kept picking them up and playing with them. What else did we use? Oh, the threading toys, they did use those a little bit, but it just becomes very hard to keep your space organized. It's such a small space, and when you've got multiple toys and things coming out and getting lost and getting dropped, it's very hard to deal with. One of the tips I got from most of the people that I talked to was that you need loads of entertainment and loads of different toys, and it just goes to show that you just never know what's going to happen. I really could have taken way less, but never mind, we had them all there, and probably the next flight I will use them all, who knows. Going on to all the clothes and the diapers and all that, we again didn't use any of it. I think I changed the boys pre-going to bed at 7 p.m. on that first flight, and that was it. They were fine then until landing when I changed them again, but I was very wary that there was going to be like blowouts and explosions. Nothing like that happened. Didn't need a change of clothes. They did dribble a lot throughout the flight, and it did kind of smell, the t-shirts, so we did change those. So again, I probably would take a whole new set of clothes, but probably didn't need the pajamas or the sleep sacks. It didn't really help them get any rest like I thought it would. Some of the things that I would have changed if I was to do it again was definitely to make sure I had 2 of everything for the twins, because we only had one of those buckle cushions and there was quite a lot of fights over that. It would have just saved a lot of hassle if I'd had 2. And I would definitely think about packing toys in some sort of like storage bags or something that were smaller items that you could put in the seat pocket in front of you or under the seat in front of you, so that toys were readily accessible, because it was really hard to keep going in the overhead locker and getting things out constantly and putting other stuff away. I think had the toys have been in a more accessible bag near to me that I didn't have to get out of my seat and get up into those overhead cabinets, I would have used them a lot more, and it probably would have been better to keep the space more organized. It's definitely going to help if you are organized on a flight. There's just ends up stuff everywhere, and it's, you know, it's inevitable, especially with twin boys that are very messy and active. It's very hard to keep the space clean. And yeah, on the way back I kind of was prepared for it to be worse than the way going, and the boys were very, very active. Really, we did not sit still for more than like 10 minutes at a time. We were tired because it was a very early start and there was no way to really get any rest, so me and my husband sort of took it in turns to sit with the boys, but they wouldn't sit still. They were to and fro every seat, but they were really good. We didn't really have any crying, so all in all I'd say it was a good experience, but I 100% thought that they were going to sleep and they didn't, and it just blew my mind. So it just shows you little bodies, little babies, they can be up for so many hours, and they were okay. But yeah, it was just disappointing for me that they didn't sleep, and I think part of that is because they are so set in their routines. They've never slept anywhere else other than their beds in the complete black. So how are they going to sleep in a completely different environment with all the noise and all the light and all the stuff going on? They weren't. It was crazy that I expected that they would, but they did really good. I was worried about sickness. Neither of them were sick. And yeah, we just tried to keep them stimulated in any way that we could and just kept calm. I think that was one of the biggest things, just to keep calm and not stress, even though there was times when we both became on edge. We didn't actually even have to walk up and down the aisles too much. The boys were pretty happy just climbing around the seats that we had. And yeah, I think as far as the flight goes, that's all I can tell you about our experience. And there's not much else that I do differently other than making sure about the sleeping arrangements with those blow up inflatables, because there's no point buying them if your airline doesn't accept them. If they do, great. I think they'd be really useful and definitely would have helped the boys get some rest. And just to be a little more organized with how you pack and think about how you're going to get things out of your luggage. One thing that I will mention that really surprised us was our stroller. We have the Upper Baby Vista stroller. I told you in the previous video that it all comes apart separately and then it goes into a bag for the flight, and we actually dropped the stroller off at the gate. But if you have a big stroller like that, you're not guaranteed to get it at the gate the other end, and I would 100% go back and spend $200 or $300 on a foldable stroller that will always be at the gate for you, because when you've got 2 very tired babies that weigh 30 pounds each, you've got that and luggage to carry. It's near impossible. We asked for assistance and no one could help us when we got back to LA, and we had to walk all through security with the boys, who were so tired by this point, and it was really miserable. So definitely invest in what they call an umbrella stroller that folds up and that you can get rid of at the gate, and then they bring it back to you at the gate, because it's not guaranteed with the larger strollers. Going on to when we arrived at our destination and the jet lag, again, this threw me. I really thought the boys would take a couple of days to adjust. I did read on some blogs and some information sites that it can take an hour a day for the time change. Bear in mind, ours was 8 hours forward, and that was exactly correct. It took 8 nights for them to get a full night's sleep, and it was wild because they weren't hungry in the mornings at all. They were only hungry in the afternoons. They would wake up at exactly 11 p.m. in the UK, which would technically have been 3 p.m. here, which is when they wake up from their nap, and they would pretty much be awake for 4 hours until what would have been nighttime here. So it just shows you how in tune we are with our natural body clock. And it really did take them 8 days to adjust and get into the routine. So if you are taking a long trip like that, I would advise you try and go for a long time so you can actually enjoy some of the holiday without broken sleep. But the jet lag was rough. There was nothing that we could really do to help them. Our boys have never slept in our bed with us. They never co-slept, so having them in our bed was not an option. They were wide awake. We'd try and calm them down and put them back to sleep, and they just wanted to get up and play. They were probably hungry as well. Each day got a little bit better, but for me, I just found it pretty rough listening to them awake and upset through the nights like that, and for so many nights on the trot. And yeah, it was okay. Maybe you could use interactive toys that are quiet and not too stimulating, or if you are happy to do so, bring your baby into your bed and just have them awake for a while. But it's just rough. It's very hard. There's lots of sites out there that give you information and tips on how to deal with jet lags with babies, and I highly recommend reading them. I wish I had. I've read more now that I've come home, and just like how I deal with it going forward again. But yeah, it was quite a challenge. Having come back, I would say it's definitely easier if you're going backwards with time change. I feel like you can make up for that sleep that you've lost, whereas when you go forward, it's like it's gone and you're just sort of trying to chase up from that lack of sleep. We are on day 3. We got back on Monday and it's now Thursday here, and the boys have done so much better. They actually slept last night from 7, and I don't think I heard anybody stir until about 4 AM, which was the best night so far. So I think it's going to be a lot quicker of an adjustment this way round when we've gone back in time, but going forward was very, very rough. So that did throw me, and the only things that I learned that I would give you tips are: don't expect them to be hungry at the times of your new destination. The boys took ages to get their hunger cues back. They just really didn't want to eat in the morning because that would have been the middle of the night, and they were much more able to eat in the afternoon. So if I was to do it again, I would probably switch their lunch from the morning to the afternoon and give them 2 meals in the afternoon. And that's probably it. I do think that it was good that we went straight into a structure there with the time there, but just be ready for quite a lot of restless nights if you do long haul travel like that with 2 young babies. And that's everything. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the comments below. I would be happy to give you any tips or tricks that I think would help. And yeah, just expect the unexpected is all I can say, because you never know what's going to happen. And if I was to do this whole trip again, it would probably be completely different. So I know I can't really give you any help with this, but this is just our experience and what happened with us. And I hope you all enjoyed hearing it, and I will be back hopefully with a more exciting day in the life video soon, when I'm back into my routine and just feeling like normal again, because I am still suffering a little bit from jet lag. But it's been lovely to talk to you all, and I'm excited to talk to you all in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.